Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And if you tune in, you're very welcome to this evening's session. And we're talking about sales. As we always do, myself and Jason, we hold a session every week on the soft and systems side to sales. Now, over the last number of weeks, we've really been talking about different elements of the process. Isn't that right, Jason? And we've been
That's right.
doing a deep dive into every step. What are the different things you need to consider to ensure that you can get yourself to the next step always and improve those conversions? But we had a conversation there recently, and we thought it might be useful to share our thoughts on what it takes for a sales function to be optimal and to
Mhm.
continually improve on its current requirements and improve those targets all the time. So today we're going to talk about all the different elements that a sales team need to ensure they keep thriving and delivering on their customer and their company requirements. So Jason, like we talked about, like obviously we focus in on the salesperson, the sales rep or account
Yep.
manager, right? So let's just park that for a little bit. So we've got a number of things that we want to discuss, but what would be your first go-to area in the sales function after the people who actually do the work on the ground?
Oh, that's a big question there.
Very big.
And just so I get you right, where do you start? My God, I think you have to start with the leader, the sales leader,
Mm,
whoever that
yeah.
might look and feel like. What are their core skills? What do they do? So some of their core skills as the sales leader, sales director, account director, or the managing director, or whoever it might be. The managing director probably should just focus on the helicopter view of the business,
Mm,
unless they're a really small company. But managing directors will be going, well, this is my helicopter view. I'll look after sales, I'll look after marketing, I'll look after productivity, I'll look after whatever the areas actually are. And they have meetings with the individual leaders. Then it's up to the sales leader, whatever hat that they have, vice president, president, or if you're an American company, account director, if you're a marketing agency or whatever, president or director, whatever hat they choose. So, what are their core skills that they have to have? Obviously, they have to have leadership skills. Next, they have to have analytical and critical thinking skills, so they can make a diagnostic of the business and what's actually happening regards to individual funnels of individual of the sales managers and the sales reps need to understand that. They need to understand how to look at analytical data, depending on where they actually are, on what type of business. Market conditions, they had to set out a strategy for the business, where the business is going, if it's relevant, if they're in the right direction and their vision and their plan for the year, what they need to do to achieve that. Then they also need coaching skills as well.
mm,
They need to coach their leaders, their immediate subordinates, so they can improve. So there's lots of different areas. They need to be relationship builders.
mm,
They
yeah.
might not necessarily be salespeople. They might
Mm,
not be salespeople, but they're really good people. They
mm,
really understand the process. They really understand the system. And again, people get put into their roles for specific reasons. Might not because they are sales, but a good understanding of the sales process and understanding the levels behind sales. But that's not necessarily they have to be good at sales. They just got to be good at leading people. So
yeah.
I think that's the very first person that we have to speak to, whatever hat that they have, whatever you might want to call them. There's lots of different names for the same person. They still do the same role,
Yeah.
but
And I would agree with that, Jason, because like, and I've just from experience, what I've seen really good sales leaders. I've seen some that are not so good.
yeah,
And I believe the sales leader sets the tone for the team, right? Because
yes,
in sales, what happens is the leaders of the business are always going to come on to you. We need more sales. we want to scale, we want to do this, that means more sales. You're going to have to increase your targets all the time. And I've seen leaders go into their teams and really in a dejected like mechanism and tone and body language say, look, the leaders have made a decision that we have to increase our targets, and I'm sorry, but we just have to figure it out. And that's not really taking ownership or
No.
accountability as a leader, because you're part of that leadership team. Instead
Mhm.
of going in, look, we have aggressive plans for this business, we have to increase our targets by 10%. I know that sounds quite optimistic and maybe a bit far-fetched, but we're going to build a strategy together to deliver that, and I'm going to be working with you all, and we're going to make it happen because we can. And Jason, so that to me straight away sets the tone of the
Mm.
team. A leader that takes it by the horn and moves forward with the team, no matter how difficult the market economic scenarios are, the targets are, you build a plan to achieve. And if it's not working, you iterate. So I agree with you on the leadership side. One of the other big ones for me, Jason, we live in a digital world now.
Of
We live
course.
in a
Yeah.
world of data. And I keep saying, from my experience, sales is the most ad hoc department in business in terms of process development and
Mm.
maturity, because every sales rep has their own process, right? And their process is better than the other sales reps process, so they're quite individualistic. I work on bringing them together, and there's so much to gain, and by leveraging the data they can get, Jason, from their customers every time they walk away from a sales meeting, either if it went well, why did it work well, record it on a database. If it
Yep.
didn't work well, if they weren't interested in buying from you, record that on a
Yep.
database, because then you have with the sale leader and a data team developing insights of all this data. Every month they can say, well, this message didn't work, this is the reason why our customers aren't buying us, how can we mitigate that negativity and make it easier for our customers to buy from us, and keep tweaking it. You're not going to get it right overnight, but by keep trialing and testing every month, Jason, you can make like serious and substantial improvements accumulate over the course of a year. So I think
Yes.
there's a huge element for data and analytics in a sales team.
Yeah, I agree. There is a lot of data there, but it has to be from the top down. It's okay. The salespeople on doing the day-to-day stuff and speaking to the clients, but they haven't got buy-in from the people above. All they're doing is they're keeping it in their little own shell, and they're keeping their knowledge to themselves. I think if there's a collaborative approach to the sales leadership, uh, and they all feel like they're trusted, they all feel like they're in a psychological safety
Mm,
within the organization to speak up and show up exactly how they would like to be done, and they're being listened to. There's so many organizations out there that they get into this moaning segment, they get into this, that, and the other, because they're going, we're not being listened to. We've got some great,
mm,
wonderful ideas, but it's going on deaf ears because the leaders have their own ideas, but there's no psychological safety within the organization. So psychological safety is a big impact. The
mm,
trust, the accountability, the credibility, and everything else around that needs to come from the top down in order for that it's shared experience and shared data, shared that collaborative approach that we're all going, we're all in this together. We can all do this together, but in order for us to do this, everyone else needs to be sharing the trust, the knowledge, and everything else. But that does have to come from the top down. Then the data from the conversations that you have with the clients and the customer has to be shared. Then there's an integral part with connecting with the other areas of the business, the marketing team, so they
mm,
can market to the right approach to what's being said from the clients, so they can go out and market with a similar message, so they can attract more leads coming in, which then they're warm leads as opposed to cold calling. Then you've got warm calling to the right people that are interested in the right sort of communication that is going out to the market. So I think
mm.
there's lots of different facets around this, which is fascinating, which, if in an ideal world, if that's all adopted, happy days. But in the real world, I think there's other different areas as well.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I always say Rome wasn't built in a day, right? And either will any performance of a team. And I like what Pandas just said there about teams. Team success depends on the level of participation. And it's
Absolutely.
important that they collaborate well together, because I see two things in my head when it comes to sales team. The people on the ground, right? Then there's the head office activity, and there's multiple facets of that, Jason, as you pointed out. And then they do all the insights, they look at all the data, and then they'll go to the sales team. Well, let's trial this, see what happens, and then give me feedback to see did it work. And if it didn't work, keep tweaking and iterating. Because once you build that process improvement within sales, it's amazing how your performance and conversions will skyrocket. Okay. And I've seen this work in action, Jason. But the other thing is, you mentioned marketing, right?
Mm,
This is a big one for me. Like, normally I see marketing and sales as two siloed teams that don't integrate well
yeah,
together. And marketing sends these leads to sales, and sales don't know what to do with them because they're not their target market. And then they don't communicate and they don't work together to make it better. So I always get sales and marketing teams to have that bridge. And the first thing I get them to work on is, what does a lead mean for our business?
yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
supply you with leads. Tell us what worked, what didn't work, why they didn't work. So then we can discover more leads and make sure you get that engine working all the time. So I believe parts of the marketing team are actually an extension of the sales team. And it's
Absolutely.
important to be cross functional with them.
Yeah, there's a collaborative approach. And back in the day, it was like two different people, sales, marketing, accounts, and whatever else. Sales and marketing need to speak on a consistent basis to repivot the communication, because they need to know what the customers are saying and really understand it. Another thing that I've done before in the past is get marketing on the phones with sales, get them to listen to
Mm,
the customers, get them out on the road and speak to the customers. And they're there either as just to learn, or they start being part of the communication process with the
mm,
customer. Then that point, they really understand what the customer needs actually are. So then they can make all the marketing material, all the lead generation, and everything in lines with that. So while I'm thinking about marketing, I'm also thinking about customer success, or customer care, or they're all part of the sales engine. They still integrate with the whole process because they are speaking with the customers. At the end of the day, they might be upselling, they might be cross selling, they might be just alleviating their fears, if I could say that, about what their concerns are. So they need to
yeah,
lots of different hats for them. But again, they need to be out in the field as well every now and
yeah,
again and see what the clients are actually saying, so they
yeah.
can articulate back and they can get to be that trusted advisor along with those account managers, account executives, or whatever you want to call um, the hat of the salesperson. So
Mm,
lots of different areas that have to be
yeah.
explored so
And
we
I
can all
think,
share.
yeah,
Sorry.
and I think that's a fascinating idea and concept for the marketing team to shadow the sales team while they're doing their calls with their prospects and their customers, because they will learn so much doing that. And along with that, Jason, what I believe is a very important element is understanding, and again, this stems from the leader,
Yep.
understanding your team's strengths, and especially on the people who are knocking on doors, because there's many stages of the funnel when it comes to sales, right?
Yep.
So, like, is it a case, it depends on, depending on the size of your company, don't you want to play to your team's strengths? Okay,
Yep.
so this is where training comes in, and I think is a huge element where you have a really strong training leader, mentor, or whatever it is, that can then define who are the best people to put in different parts of the funnel. So it's not just about, say, you, Jason, going out, you're a sales rep for a company and you do the full activities along the
Mm.
funnel, right? But you may have weaknesses and you may have strengths. So why put you in a place where it could compromise your chance of getting the business a sale? So you could be very good at generating leads, okay, for example. So we'll put you in the area of generating really good, warm, hot leads that are in the target market. And then we'll pass those leads on to someone who's really good at either doing proposals or negotiation and
Yep.
stuff like that. So you're giving your funnel the best chance. And again, the only way you'll learn this is by shadowing, by training, and then getting the best out of your team and playing to their strengths.
Yeah, I completely concur with that. And that's what a lot of the big corporate companies do. They have people that are the hunters, then
Mm.
you have the people that are the gatherers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they all work in different strategic areas. Some people are really good at opening the cell, but they're not so good at closing the cell. Some people are good at exploring. Some people are just good at closing and then collaborating with the client and getting them to see it and how we can actually integrate this within their business or whatever the products and services might look and feel like. So there are, and then you have your customer success people that would be or account managing it. That will be just doing the day-to-day things that, with the clients, just to make sure that they're happy with the services and make sure. Oh, Panda said, when it comes to sales, do a spot of the products. Yeah, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Yeah, that's always a good way of looking at it as well. So it's good to see the structure and who is good. And remember, what also a sales manager's job is to work out people's motivations. And what do I mean by motivations? I mean by their intrinsic motivations, what it means to them to actually get the deal, what it means to them to have the prestige, what it means to them to have something else. Then you have the extrinsic motivations, the other
Mm.
areas of their motivations. What is it going to mean to them once they have that? What is it going to mean to them with kudos? So a sales manager or sales leader needs to work that out with the different areas of the teams, whether they're hunters, whether they're gatherers, or
Mm.
whether they're customer success. Each individual has to be motivated in a different way. Uh, and also, obviously, everyone wants to make money at the end of the day. Well, that's obvious. But what does that money mean to you? How are you going to spend that? So some people are motivated by that. But I think that plays a massive part in their team's performance. As soon as the sales leaders understand how the individuals actually work and how they can be motivated to get and do what they need to do to achieve their roles and achieve their targets.
Yeah, and agree, Jason. And another element, and that brings me on to another point, which I believe is uber important when it comes to sales, and that is how can you keep being creative, developing new strategies
Yeah.
to improve sales? What are all the drivers in an industry? It's not just about knocking on doors. There's many other drivers, and it's about exploiting those drivers in your industry to ensure you're giving your company the most effective mechanism to drive sales to your business and not your
Mm.
competition. So with that, like again, possibly under the sales leader sort of activity responsibilities could be building really strong strategies, right? Now, if they have sales teams underneath, it could be part of the management team as well, depending on the size. But I believe there has to be a really strong strategy in any sales team because otherwise you'll just keep doing the same things to get the same results. And then when things get bad, Jason, as we've seen it, then you put your company at risk. So having a really strong strategy is super important.
Pam, just mentioned strategy is hugely important, but it's also the vision of the
Mm.
company and that get the buy-in of what that vision actually looks and feels like. And again, you probably need that strategy along there. That's probably where the critical thinking comes in there, and
Mm.
how we can actually work as a team to. I don't necessarily think it's great to have the leader needs to say, well, this is the vision, this is where we're going to go. Let's work out strategy together to know how we're going to do that. What do you actually need to actually go out and need to perform cold calling, warm calling, getting the leads, lead generation. How else are we going to do that? How else can we work cohesively as a team to just make sure that we can propel ourselves to the future? And especially if that year you go up by 4% or 10% on
Mm.
your yearly sales goals. Let's see how we can work that together. And again, whiteboarding a way of doing that. Maybe it's a day out of your sales week for for the year, I think that's a good day spent on strategizing and analyzing where we all need to go, what we all need to do, and let's be accountable for our own actions within doing that.
Yeah, no, for sure, Jason. And then that brings me on to another point that I like to do. Obviously, you're going to have a strategy for your day-to-day bread and butter sales, your bread and butter customers that you survive and you rely on for surviving your business, right? But then you probably want to develop a different strategy for, you may want to have some of the key market leaders in your industry as customers, or maybe some big players on your portfolio. You're going to create a completely different set of like skill sets, strategies, and mechanisms to drive sales in those areas. So maybe you want to have multiple strategies. So part of that day, you're going to make those distinctions and those channels for the bread and butter sales, and then the big ticket accounts that are really good to have under your umbrella as a company.
Yeah, I think the big ticket accounts, like you have, what I'm thinking of, you have the farmers that probably nurture and look after the big accounts. But the way I seem to think is they still need to be hunters as well. They can't just be the farmers that just sit on those accounts forever and a day,
Yeah,
and they
exactly.
get stagnant because they're not actively going out hunting. All they're doing is they're bringing in bread and butter and holding on to that, which is great and wonderful because they're still bringing in revenue, which is great for the bigger accounts. But I think if they want to be incentivized, I think there needs to be an element that they say we need to still go out and hunt. It's great to look after these big accounts, and especially if they leave the organization and they go into another organization and everyone thinks they're great and they're shit out of what they do, but they go into another organization and they fall flat in their face because they still don't have the big accounts to look after as they did in the previous organization. So I think there's an element in there, and like it depends on the organization on how they work and how they motivate and how they base their commissions on that. But I think there's an element of that, and maybe I'm thinking about commission because that's still part of the process, and the sales lead actually will do that, and there's lots of different points of view on that. But I think part of that needs to be done with maybe touch points to the client. You get marks for that, how many engagements that you speak with, touch points, which is all recorded on a CRM, and that's how you can get money back from your commissions as well as. So I've gone off on a journey there, and it's probably just off topic. So let's bring it back down.
Let's bring it back. Well, look, Jason, we're coming up on time, right? So, what would be your biggest call out? What would be the first thing you would say to a sales team that they should start considering now as a holistic process within their business?
Go out and sell. No, I'm joking. Obviously, that's the big thing. But let's work out what needs to be done, how we're going to do that. Break everything down into small incremental steps. Work out your time management. Work as a team, not as an individual. Help each other out. Make sure there's lots of shared knowledge and lots of shared advice within whichever area of the team that you're in, making sure that there's a focus and a vision towards the end goal, and we can all see it together as opposed to being an individual, and share different resources within the marketing team. You said one thing, I said many things there.
Yeah.
I might have got carried away.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say two things, even though I said one, right? I would recommend all sales leaders to build an operating canvas for their team. What are all the different moving parts? So create a picture of that, and it won't be right in the beginning, but get it started and then work on iterating it and making it better all the time. So build that operating canvas for your team. And the big thing that I always say to sales team is work together to make it better, collaborate. Gone are the days of sales teams being very individualistic in terms of how they get their sales. When you work together as a sales team and you get that click between them, you get that eureka moment, the magic happens with sales team. So find it, search for it, and find it.
Completely.
So look, Jason, thanks very much for your time, and thanks for everyone tuning in, and Panda for your contribution. And we'll see you again next week with another episode in the soft and systems sides to sales. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.